First contact. Nara stood at the edge of the grand hall, her slender blue fingers trembling slightly as she adjusted her ceremonial diplomat robe. Today was the day that would change Zelterra's history forever. Humans were coming. For generations, Zelteri children grew up hearing frightening tales about humans, violent, unpredictable creatures who conquered whatever they touched. Nara had absorbed these stories since childhood, imagining humans as monsters who would someday arrive to claim their peaceful world. "Remember your training," whispered Elder Vex beside her. "Observe everything. Your notes will become part of our historical record." Nara nodded nervously. At only 22 cycles old, she was the youngest diplomatic apprentice ever assigned to such an important event. The honor terrified her. Through the tall windows of the Prime Minister's reception hall, Nara could see the troubled skies of her homeworld. The once vibrant atmosphere had grown increasingly unstable over the past decade. Crops failed in the northern regions. The sacred crystal mines produced less energy each cycle. The Zelteri Science Council had confirmed what many feared. Their planet was dying. "They're landing," announced the communications officer. Everyone in the room stiffened. Zelteri had limited space technology, nothing compared to what humans reportedly possessed. When the human vessel had appeared in their system 3 days ago, offering peaceful contact, the Zelteri Council had few options but to accept. Prime Minister Loreth stepped forward, her ceremonial headdress catching the light. "We will show them that Zelteri are civilized and dignified. They may have weapons and technology, but we have culture and wisdom." Nara's 3 hearts pounded in her chest. Through the windows, she watched the sleek human craft descend toward the landing pad. It looked predatory somehow, with sharp angles unlike the rounded designs Zelteri engineers preferred. "Begin recording," Elder Vex instructed her quietly. Nara activated her data tablet, focusing its lens on the main doors as they swung open. 6 Zelteri guards entered first, then stood aside. The first human walked into the room. Nara barely suppressed a gasp. He was taller than she expected, with skin a pinkish-brown color that seemed unnervingly exposed without proper scales or protective coloring. His eyes were forward-facing like a predator's, set in a flat face with a protruding nose. When he smiled, Nara saw the flash of white teeth that seemed designed for tearing flesh. "Greetings from Earth. I'm John Carter, lead negotiator for the United Earth Alliance," he said, his voice deeper than any Zelteri male. 3 more humans followed him, a female with long yellow head tendrils, and 2 more males, one with dark skin and one with pale. All wore similar blue uniforms with silver emblems. Prime Minister Loreth stepped forward. "Welcome to Zelterra. I am Prime Minister Loreth. We receive you in peace." Nara carefully recorded everything, noticing how the humans moved with surprising speed and confidence. The lead human, John Carter, had hands that looked incredibly strong, capable of crushing the Zelteri throat with ease. When he extended one toward Prime Minister Loreth, Nara tensed. "The human handshake," Elder Vex whispered. They briefed the Prime Minister on this custom. Nara watched in horror as their leader actually touched the human's bare skin, grasping hands briefly. The human smiled again, showing those terrible teeth. "We're pleased to establish diplomatic relations," John Carter said. "We believe this meeting will benefit both our peoples." Nara noted how his eyes scanned the room, taking in details, assessing threats, just like the predator she knew humans to be. When his gaze briefly met hers, Nara quickly looked down at her tablet, her middle heart racing. These creatures had explored countless stars and reportedly subjugated many worlds. Now they had come to Zelterra in its time of weakness. Whatever they claimed about peace, Nara knew the truth. Humans were dangerous. And now they were here. Nara hurried down the curved hallway of the diplomatic center, clutching her tablet close to her chest. The humans had been on Zelterra for 3 days now, and she had managed to avoid direct contact with them. Until now. Apprentice Nara called Minister Tens from a doorway. "Please bring these documents to the human delegation in Conference Room Blue." Nera's 3 hearts skipped a beat. Minister, perhaps Senior Apprentice Kelva cooled. You need exposure to our visitors, Tens said firmly. Your observations have been detailed but lack actual interaction. This is a simple task. Taking the crystal data chips with trembling fingers, Nera nodded reluctantly. The walk to conference room blue felt like crossing the endless desert. She paused outside the door, hearing the strange cadence of human voices inside. Their speech patterns were so abrupt compared to the melodic Zeltari language. She pressed the entry chime, and the door slid open. 4 humans looked up at her entrance. I bring information from Minister Tens, Nera said, her voice higher than usual. She kept her eyes down, avoiding direct contact with the predatory human gaze. Thanks, said a deep voice. John Carter approached her with quick, powerful strides. Nera instinctively backed up a step. The human stopped, his mouth forming that tooth-bearing expression they called a smile. To Zeltari, exposing teeth was a threat display. Sorry, he said, moving more slowly. Didn't mean to startle you. Nera placed the data chips on the table instead of handing them directly to him. Minister Tens requests your response by evening, she said formally. The female human with yellow head tendrils, hair, they called it, stepped forward. I'm Lisa Bennett, science officer. You're the apprentice who's been recording our meetings, right? Nera nodded stiffly. It is my duty to document these historic interactions. Would you like to ask us anything? John Carter offered. Off the record, we're curious about Zeltari culture too. His direct question made Nera uncomfortable. She noticed how the humans stood too close together, how they gestured with their hands when speaking. Hands that could form fists, that could strike and grab. I must return to my duties, she said, backing toward the door. The dark-skinned human offered her a small package. Try this before you go. It's called chocolate, a sweet from Earth. Nera looked at the brown square with suspicion. Was this a test? An attempt to poison the Zeltari to see their biological reactions? No thank you, she said quickly. As she hurried back to her office, Nera added notes to her private observations. Humans attempt to create false comfort through food offerings. They display teeth frequently, move unpredictably, and ask personal questions to gather intelligence. That evening, Nera observed the first major negotiation between the species. The humans offered technology and assistance with Zeltari's climate crisis. In exchange, they wanted access to Zeltari crystal formations and cultural exchange. They claimed to need the crystals for scientific research, Nera whispered to Elder Vex. But our crystals could power weapons. Later, during the meal ceremony, Nera watched John Carter carefully. When he thought no one was looking, she saw him scanning the room, examining the architecture, perhaps identifying weaknesses. Once, he caught her watching and raised his drinking vessel slightly in her direction. Nera quickly looked away. The gesture seemed friendly, but she knew better. Humans were masters of deception according to all the stories. Their seeming kindness was just a tactic. That night, she added to her personal log. The human called John Carter pays particular attention to me. Perhaps he senses my distrust. I must be more careful in observing without being detected. The safety of Zeltara may depend on uncovering their true intentions. Nera stood by the tall windows of the diplomatic complex, watching storm clouds gather over the capital city. The negotiations with the humans had continued for nearly 2 weeks now. Outside, protesters had gathered, some welcoming the potential human aid, others warning against trusting the strangers. She was making notes about the morning's trade discussion when she felt it. A low rumble beneath her feet. At first, she thought it was the heavy transport vehicles that passed occasionally. Then the rumble grew stronger. Earthquake. Someone shouted from down the hall. The floor suddenly lurched violently. Nera stumbled, falling against the window as the entire building swayed. The glass cracked in front of her face. Panic surged through her as she pushed away and tried to run for the door. The lights flickered off. Emergency alerts blared. The shaking intensified, making it impossible to stand. Nara dropped to her knees, covering her head as ceiling panels began to fall. A deafening crack echoed through the building. The floor beneath her tilted sharply. Nara slid helplessly toward the wall as the section of building she was in began to collapse. She screamed as everything around her shifted and fell. Something struck her head. Darkness followed. Nara woke to pain and complete darkness. She was lying on her side, pinned down by something heavy across her lower legs. Dust filled her lungs, making her cough painfully. "Help," she called, her voice weak. "Anyone?" Only distant sounds answered, rumbling, creaking, and faint cries far away. The building had collapsed. From the complete darkness, and the way sound was muffled, Nara realized she was buried in the rubble. Panic threatened to overwhelm her. Zelteri were vulnerable to small spaces. Their triple lung system needed fresh air. Already she felt her breathing becoming shallow. Nara tried activating her emergency beacon, but her wrist device was damaged. She felt around carefully, wincing as sharp debris cut her sensitive fingers. There was no clear way out. The weight on her legs wasn't crushing, but she couldn't free herself. "Help," she called again, louder this time. "I'm trapped." She listened, hoping to hear rescue teams. The Zelteri Emergency Corps would be overwhelmed across the city. How long before they reached the diplomatic sector? Hours seemed to pass. The air grew stale. Nara's third heart had shut down to conserve oxygen, a biological response that bought her time but indicated severe distress. Her throat was dry from dust and thirst. A faint sound caught her attention. Shifting rubble, somewhere nearby. Then a voice. "Hello? Is someone there?" The voice was deep, with that strange human accent. Nara felt conflicting emotions. Relief that someone might find her, but fear that it was a human. "Here," she called weakly. "I'm trapped." More sounds of movement, closer now. "Keep talking so I can find you," the human voice said. "I'm here," Nara said, coughing. "My legs are pinned. I can't move." The sounds grew closer. Then a beam of light cut through a small opening in the rubble above her. In the harsh light, Nara saw a human face peering down. John Carter, covered in dust, a cut on his forehead bleeding red human blood. "I found you," he said, relief evident in his voice. "Are you badly hurt?" Nara blinked against the light. "My legs are trapped. I cannot feel them." "I'm coming down to you," John said. "The building isn't stable. We need to get out quickly." Fear gripped Nara. Being trapped was terrifying, but being trapped with a human. Yet what choice did she have? John carefully widened the opening, sending small cascades of debris around her. Then he squeezed through the gap, bringing his light and a small pack. In the confined space, he seemed even larger and more intimidating. "I'm going to get you out," he promised, examining the beam across her legs. "But we'll have to work together. The entire structure could come down any minute." Nara looked into the human's eyes and saw something unexpected, genuine concern. As the building groaned around them, she realized her survival now depended entirely on this creature she had been taught to fear. John knelt beside Nara in the cramped space, his light revealing the severity of their situation. The beam across her legs was part of a larger collapse. Moving it carelessly could bring down more debris on them both. "I need to check your injuries first," he said, his voice calm despite the danger. "May I examine your legs?" Nara hesitated. Physical contact with strangers was taboo in Zelteri culture, especially with aliens, but she could feel her strength fading. "Yes," she whispered. John gently examined where the beam pinned her legs, careful not to cause additional pain. "Good news, the beam isn't crushing you. It's just trapping you. I think I can lift it enough for you to pull free." A distant rumble shook more dust from above them. Time was running out. "I have medical supplies," John said, opening his small pack. He removed a bottle of water and offered it to her. "Drink first. You're dehydrated." Nara looked at the container suspiciously. "It's just water," John said softly. "I promise." Her thirst overcame her fear. The water was cool and clean, bringing immediate relief to her dust-filled throat. "Thank you," she said quietly. John positioned himself beside the beam. "When I lift, you need to pull yourself backward immediately. Ready?" Nara nodded, bracing herself with her arms. 1, 2, 3. John strained against the beam, his face reddening with effort. The heavy structure shifted slightly, just enough for Nara to drag herself backward with a painful cry. The moment she was clear, John carefully lowered the beam and moved to her side. "Let me check for breaks," he said, running a small device over her legs. "Human medical tech, but it works on most species." The scanner showed no broken bones, only severe bruising. John wrapped compression bandages around her legs to reduce swelling. "Can you stand?" he asked. With John's support, Nara managed to get to her feet, wincing. "I can walk," she said, though standing was painful. "We need to find a way out," John said, scanning their surroundings. "The main exits will be blocked." Another tremor shook their prison, stronger this time. Part of the ceiling collapsed nearby, narrowly missing them. "Aftershocks," John explained. "We don't have much time." He spotted a small opening leading upward. There, that might lead to the emergency stairwell. The gap was tight, especially for John's larger frame. "You go first," he said. "I'll boost you up." Nara hesitated. "Why are you helping me? Your people must be looking for you." John looked surprised by the question. "Because you need help. That's all that matters right now." When Nara still appeared uncertain, he added, "My team knows I was heading to the archives when the quake hit. If they're alive, they'll search, but we can't wait. This building could completely collapse." Another aftershock decided for them. John quickly interlaced his fingers to create a step for Nara. "Go now." With his boost, Nara squeezed through the narrow gap, her injured legs protesting. From above, she watched John struggle to follow, his broader shoulders barely fitting through the opening. Just as he pulled himself up, a violent tremor shook the building. The space they had just left collapsed completely. "That was close," John said, breathing heavily. They found themselves in a damaged hallway. Emergency lights flickered weakly, casting eerie shadows. The air was slightly fresher here. "This way," John said, pointing toward what looked like an emergency exit sign in Zeltari script. When Nara stumbled, John immediately offered his shoulder for support. She hesitated only briefly before accepting his help. "I didn't expect," Nara began, then stopped. "Expect what?" John asked as they moved carefully through the ruins. "That a human would risk his life to save me," she admitted. John gave her a gentle smile, without showing his teeth this time. "There's a lot our peoples don't know about each other yet." As they made their way toward possible safety, Nara realized that everything she thought she knew about humans might be wrong. John and Nara emerged from the diplomatic complex into a scene of devastation. The beautiful Zeltari capital, with its soaring crystal towers and flowing architecture, lay in ruins. Dust filled the air, turning the normally purple sky a sickly gray. Emergency vehicles moved through the streets, their lights flashing as rescue workers searched for survivors. "The evacuation center should be at Central Park," Nara said, coughing as she leaned against a broken wall. Her legs throbbed with pain, but the compression bandages John had applied helped her stand. John checked his device. "That's 4 miles from here. Can you make it that far?" Nara looked doubtful, but nodded. "I must try." They began their slow journey through the devastated city. The main roads were blocked by fallen buildings and emergency vehicles, forcing them to take smaller side streets. Nara limped beside John, occasionally accepting his arm for support when the pain became too intense. "Why was your species on Zeltara?" Nara asked as they rested briefly in the shade of a damaged transport hub. "The truth, please." John drank sparingly from his water bottle, then offered it to her. "Exactly what we told your government. We've been mapping this sector of space, and detected your planet's environmental crisis. We came to offer help. Many Zelteri believe humans only help when there's something to gain, Nera said, studying his face. John sighed. I won't lie. We're interested in your crystal technology. It's unlike anything we've seen. But that doesn't mean our offer to help isn't genuine. They continued walking, passing groups of injured Zelteri being treated in makeshift aid stations. To Nera's surprise, John stopped at each one, offering his remaining medical supplies and helping move debris. She watched as he gently helped an elderly Zelteri woman find shelter, communicating despite the language barrier. On Earth, John explained as they moved on, we have earthquakes too. When disaster strikes, neighbors help each other, regardless of differences. Even among different human groups, Nara asked. Especially then, John replied, though it took us centuries to learn that lesson. As they turned a corner, they found a collapsed school building. Zelteri rescue workers struggled to reach children trapped inside. Without hesitation, John jogged over to help, his strength proving valuable in moving heavy debris. Nera watched in amazement as the human worked tirelessly alongside the Zelteri, following their instructions and showing no concern for his own exhaustion. When a young Zelteri child was finally pulled from the rubble, John's face showed the same relief as the rescue workers. They continued their journey as afternoon faded toward evening. The temperature dropped rapidly, as was common on Zeltara. You're shivering, John noted, removing his outer jacket and offering it to Nera. Won't you be cold? She asked, surprised by the gesture. Humans evolved as endurance hunters, John explained. We can regulate our temperature better than many species. Nera accepted the jacket, curious. Hunters. So the stories about humans being predators are true. John smiled. Technically, yes, but that same evolutionary path gave us our drive to protect others. The instincts that made us good hunters also made us good guardians. As night fell, they sheltered in an abandoned building. John found some emergency rations in his pack and shared them with Nera. Why do you fear humans so much? He asked quietly. Nera looked down. Our historical records speak of aggressive species that destroyed others. When we first detected Earth transmissions, many of your entertainment programs showed violence and conquest. John laughed softly. You judged our entire species by our action movies. We had nothing else to go by, Nora admitted. That would be like us judging Zelteri by your warrior poetry, John said. Which, by the way, I've read and found beautiful. Nera looked at him with new eyes. This human had saved her life, helped others without hesitation, and now sat sharing his food while discussing Zelteri literature. Perhaps she had been wrong about humans all along. Dawn broke over the devastated city, painting the destruction in harsh light. Nara and John set out early, knowing that reaching the evacuation center before nightfall was critical. Nara's legs had stiffened overnight, making each step painful, but she refused to complain. We need to cross the River Lux, she said, pointing toward the water that divided the city. There's a bridge half a mile downstream. They made their way through empty streets, occasionally passing other survivors heading in the same direction. The distant sound of rescue vehicles and emergency alerts created an eerie background to their journey. The evacuation center will have proper medical care, John reassured her as he noticed her wincing. We're making good time. When they reached the riverbank, they stopped in dismay. The elegant bridge that normally spanned the water was partially collapsed, its center section hanging precariously over the rushing river below. Is there another crossing? John asked. Nera shook her head. Not for miles. The other bridges were older and less stable. They're likely completely destroyed. They surveyed the damaged bridge. One narrow section of walkway remained attached to the support beams, creating a precarious path across. It might hold one person at a time, John said, testing the edge carefully. The support structure seems intact on this side. Nera stepped back, her 3 hearts racing. I cannot cross that. Zelteri are not good swimmers. If I fall. John studied the rushing water below, then the frightened expression on Nera's face. We'll go together. I won't let you fall. He offered his hand. After a moment's hesitation, Nera took it. They stepped onto the damaged bridge together. The remaining walkway was barely 2 feet wide, with nothing but air on either side. John kept himself between Nera and the edge, one arm supporting her waist. Small steps, he instructed. Focus on my voice, not on the water. They were halfway across when a loud crack echoed through the air. The bridge shuddered beneath them. Nara froze in terror. Don't stop, John urged gently. We need to keep moving. A second crack, louder than the first. The section behind them broke away, plunging into the river. The remaining walkway tilted sharply. Run, John shouted, pushing Nera forward. Nera stumbled ahead, ignoring the pain in her legs. She could feel the bridge collapsing behind them. Just as she neared the far side, the entire section gave way. John shoved her forward with all his strength. Nera landed hard on the solid ground of the far shore. When she turned back, she saw John hanging from a twisted support beam, the bridge gone beneath him. John, she screamed. Stay back, he warned as she moved toward the edge. The remaining structure was unstable. John tried to pull himself up, but the metal was slick with rain. Below him, the river churned violently. The beam won't hold both of us, he called. Get to the evacuation center. Tell them there are humans trapped in the diplomatic sector. I won't leave you, Nera insisted, searching frantically for something to help him. The support beam groaned, bending under John's weight. His hands were slipping. Nara, listen, he said, his voice calm despite his desperate situation. This is what humans do. We protect others. It's who we are. Before she could respond, the beam gave way. John fell, hitting the water with a splash that was swallowed by the roaring river. Nara screamed his name, watching helplessly as the current swept him away. For several minutes, she searched the churning water, hoping to see him surface. Nothing. Tears streamed down her face, a rare display of emotion for a Zelteri. The human had sacrificed himself to save her. Everything she had believed about his species was wrong. John Carter wasn't a fierce predator to be feared. He was a protector who had given his life for someone he barely knew. With a heavy heart, Nera turned and limped toward the evacuation center, carrying with her a story that would change how her people viewed humans forever. Nera reached the evacuation center as evening approached. The Central Park, once filled with Zelteri's famous floating gardens, now served as a massive refuge camp. Medical tents, food distribution stations, and temporary shelters covered the grounds. Exhausted emergency workers moved among the thousands of displaced citizens. A medical worker rushed to help Nera as she stumbled through the entrance. You're injured. Come this way. Thank you, Nera said weakly, allowing herself to be led to a treatment area. As the doctor examined her legs, Nera explained where she had come from. The diplomatic complex. You survived that? The doctor asked in amazement. It was one of the worst-hit buildings. A human saved me, Nera said, her voice breaking. John Carter. He didn't make it across the river. The doctor paused. A human rescued you. Word spread quickly through the camp. Soon, Elder Vex appeared at Nera's side, relief evident on his weathered face. Young one, we feared you were lost, he said, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. Tell me what happened. Nera recounted her experience. Being trapped, John finding her, their journey through the ruined city, and his final sacrifice at the bridge. As she spoke, other Zelteri gathered to listen. He knew the bridge wouldn't hold us both, she finished, wiping tears from her eyes. He chose to save me instead of himself. Elder Vex looked troubled. This contradicts everything we believed about humans. Everything I believed was wrong, Nora admitted. John helped everyone we encountered. Zelteri children, elders, anyone in need. He shared his supplies, his strength, even his clothing when I was cold. A communications officer approached them. Elder, we've received a transmission. 3 human vessels have entered orbit. They're offering emergency assistance, medical supplies, temporary shelters, and rescue equipment. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Some expressed doubt, others hope. They should be allowed to help, Nara said firmly, standing despite her pain. I've seen what humans are capable of. Not conquest, but compassion. Elder Vex studied her for a long moment. Your experience carries weight. Apprentice Nara, I will recommend to the surviving council members that we accept their aid. Within hours, human shuttles began landing at designated areas around the city. Teams of human emergency workers in bright orange uniforms deployed with advanced equipment. They worked alongside Zelteri crews, their superior technology helping locate survivors buried in rubble. Nara insisted on helping despite her injuries. She served as a translator between human rescue teams and Zelteri emergency workers, building bridges of communication and trust. 3 days passed in a blur of rescue operations and aid distribution. Nara had just finished a shift when a commotion near the medical center caught her attention. They found another survivor, someone called. Curious, Nara limped toward the gathering crowd. A rescue team was transferring someone from a transport vehicle to the medical facility. As they passed, Nara glimpsed the patient's face and froze. It was John. He was unconscious, badly injured, but unmistakably alive. Somehow he had survived the river. Where did you find him? Nara asked one of the Zelteri rescue workers, her voice trembling. Downstream, near the old dam. He was caught in debris, half submerged. It's a miracle he survived. Nara stayed by John's side as the doctors worked to treat his injuries. When he finally opened his eyes the next morning, she was there. Nara, he whispered, his voice hoarse. You made it. Because of you, she replied softly. Your people came. They're helping my people rebuild. A weak smile crossed John's face. See, not so fierce after all. Nara took his hand, no longer afraid of the human touch. You were wrong about one thing, though. Humans aren't just protectors. You're also survivors. News of John's survival spread quickly through the evacuation center. Many Zelteri came to see the human who had risked everything to save one of their own. With each retelling, the story grew, becoming a powerful symbol of what could be possible between their species. The rebuilding of the Zelteri capital began in earnest 1 month after the earthquake. The skyline, once dominated by elegant crystal towers, now featured human prefabricated structures alongside Zelteri designs. The contrast symbolized the unexpected alliance that had formed in disaster's wake. John walked slowly along the newly cleared central boulevard, his body still recovering from injuries. Beside him, Nara pointed out landmarks and explained their cultural significance. This was our Hall of Ancestors, she said, indicating a partially restored building. Your engineers helped stabilize the foundation so we could save it. The blending of our technologies is working better than anyone expected, John replied, watching as human and Zelteri work crews collaborated on a construction project. In the weeks since the earthquake, everything had changed. The Zelteri Council, initially skeptical of human intentions, had embraced the partnership after witnessing their selfless assistance. What began as emergency aid had evolved into a joint rebuilding effort. The council meeting is about to start, Nara reminded him, checking the time. We should hurry. They entered the temporary government building, where both species gathered to discuss the future. Nara, once a junior apprentice, now sat as the official liaison between humans and Zelteri. Her experience with John had transformed her from the most fearful of her people to the strongest advocate for cooperation. Prime Minister Lorath called the meeting to order. Today we vote on the formal alliance between Zeltara and Earth. Before we proceed, does anyone wish to speak? Elder Vex stood. When humans first arrived on our world, many of us feared them. We saw only their strength and believed it meant danger. He looked at John and Nara. We fail to understand that strength can protect as well as harm. Our young liaison and her human friend have shown us this truth. John was invited to address the council. As he stood, he noticed how differently the Zelteri now looked at him, not with fear, but with respect. "My people have a saying," John began. "A friend in need is a friend indeed." The earthquake was a tragedy, but it gave us something valuable. The chance to know each other as we truly are, not as we feared each other to be. After the vote, which unanimously approved the alliance, Nara and John walked through the park where the evacuation center had once stood. New plants were beginning to grow where temporary shelters had been. "I received my new assignment today," John said, stopping beside a memorial to those lost in the earthquake. "I'll be stationed here for at least 2 years as part of the cultural exchange program." Nara's expression brightened. "You're staying?" "Someone needs to correct all those scary stories about humans," he said with a smile. They continued walking, discussing plans for the future. Already, Zelteri children played games with human children in the rebuilt schools. Scientists from both worlds collaborated in laboratories, combining knowledge to address Zeltera's environmental crisis. That evening, they attended a ceremony to commemorate the 1-month anniversary of the earthquake. Lanterns floated into the sky, honoring those who had not survived. When it was Nara's turn to speak, she looked out at the mixed crowd of humans and Zelteri. "Before the earthquake, I documented everything about humans, believing I was recording the behaviors of dangerous aliens," she admitted. "I was wrong. What I witnessed instead was courage, compassion, and self-sacrifice." She gestured toward John and the other humans. "These are not fierce creatures to be feared, but friends who came when we needed them most." As the ceremony ended, Nara and John stood on a hillside, watching the thousands of lanterns illuminate the night sky. "What happens now?" John asked. "Now we build something new," Nara replied. "Not just buildings, but understanding." In the months and years that followed, their story became legend. The frightened alien girl and the human who became her savior. It was told in schools on both worlds as the beginning of a friendship between species that once feared each other. But for Nara and John, watching the new city rise from ruins, it wasn't about legends. It was about two people who discovered that sometimes saving each other is the first step to saving worlds.